Initially, they were regarded as mere oddities. These small flying insects caused only minor damage and seemed incapable of altering the course of the war in Ukraine. But circumstances have shifted, and so have the drones. From curiosities, they have evolved into indispensable tools and the most critical weapons in Ukraine's defensive arsenal against Russia. In this video, we delve inside a drone unit that has turned the hunt for Russian forces into a relentless 24/7 operation modeled after the efficiency of McDonald's. That unit is Lasar Group. Before diving into the details, comment number 2 if you support Ukraine, number 3 if you support Russia, and number 4 if you love peace. This group has an unexpectedly bizarre origin story. On January 16th, the Wall Street Journal became one of the few Western media outlets granted access to Lasar Group's operational area. Operating from a secret bunker, dozens of Ukraine's top drone operators work in shifts, ensuring Russian forces can never escape the persistent threat from these airborne harassers that inflict severe damage on Putin's invasion efforts. It is an extremely efficient, round-the-clock campaign built on a McDonald's-like model, where every individual in the bunker has a specific role, all aligned toward a common objective. For McDonald's, the goal is selling burgers. For Ukraine, this model focuses on feeding more Russian troops into the meat grinder. The accomplishments of Lasar's group are profoundly impressive, as will become clear later in the video. Yet the early days of this unit bear little resemblance to what one might imagine for a component now vital to Ukraine's military. Lasar's group was not founded by a tech genius or serving Ukrainian military personnel. Instead, it sprang from the vision of someone unlikely to lead one of Ukraine's most effective units, Pavlo Yelizarov, a former television talk show producer who transformed into a major figure in the military domain. This transition may not be as surprising as it appears. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was once a comedian with no political experience, yet he emerged as a courageous symbol for a nation fighting Putin's aggression. According to a Forbes report in October, Yelizarov is not an outlier, but the founder of one of many effective structures Ukraine has employed in its war against Russia, built by civilians. The former television producer, who worked on a program aptly named Freedom of Speech, decided to take decisive action when Russia's invasion reached his home in Pechesk, central Kyiv. As explosions shook the ground outside his residence, Yelizarov realized a war he never believed would happen had arrived. He glued himself to television news, following every moment of the invasion until he felt compelled to act. Picking up the phone marked Yelizarov's first major contribution to Ukraine's war effort. He called former Ukrainian Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov without expecting a response, but Reznikov answered. Immediately after that call, the television producer joined Ukraine's newly formed 126th Territorial Defense Battalion, where he was tasked with defending the Darnitsa district against the Russian advance. With an AK-47 in hand, Yelizarov began organizing people and resources. He established checkpoints, sourced equipment, and refurbished the battalion's outdated headquarters located in a kindergarten building. It was likely around this time that Yelizarov recognized he could contribute far more. The television producer possessed cash equivalent to about $1.09 million. He spent more than $391,000 of it in roughly the first month as a territorial defender. By early April, fighting around Kyiv had subsided, and Yelizarov was fortunate not to engage in combat during the war's opening weeks. As it turned out, Ukraine was fortunate as well. Next, the former television producer visited a newly formed unit of Ukraine's Special Operations Forces called White Wolves, operating in Zaporizhia. This unit first demonstrated to Yelizarov how drones could be employed in combat. A new idea took root, becoming the seed for Lasar's group. According to the Wall Street Journal, Yelizarov purchased an agricultural drone from smugglers who had previously used it to transport cigarettes across borders. We attached a 120mm mortar round to it. We conducted the first use, Yelizarov told the newspaper. We were very excited about it.
The Wall Street Journal shared footage apparently from that initial use, captured live by the drone. Hovering over the target, the drone carrying the mortar round locked on. "Launch," the command came. The mortar round dropped. The target exploded. In that moment, Yelizarov surely realized Ukraine possessed a cheap yet highly effective weapon. By the summer of 2022, Lasar Group, in its most primitive form, had been established. Working in a garage belonging to one of the drone operators who joined the new unit, Yelizarov spent the remaining approximately $674,000 from his personal war fund to purchase parts from China, which his team used to begin assembling drones. With the newly developed drone, Yelizarov donated his own Starlink terminal for the first flight. The drone was destroyed, but the television producer knew he had an idea worth building upon. Further innovations and developments followed.
One of Yelizarov's civilian acquaintances, Mustafa Nayem, then Deputy Minister of Infrastructure of Ukraine, provided the newly formed Lasar Group with 4 new Starlink terminals. Yelizarov's team also began experimenting with their drones, achieving a breakthrough by cramming the equivalent of 12.5 battery packs into a drone, compared to the previous 2. "I don't understand why a drone should only operate for half an hour, at most 1 hour per shift," Yelizarov said. One battery pack cost about $1,300 at the time, so adding them meant an extra $20,000 per drone. "Expensive, but the investment paid off," Yelizarov told Forbes, adding, "With such a drone, one pilot can strike 16 military assets in a single night, instead of just 2. The work intensified. As Lasar Group grew, the concept of the McDonald's of drones took flight. "I'm lazy. I don't like working," Yelizarov joked with Forbes when describing his management style. Rather than involving himself directly in every task, the former television producer viewed his primary role, after the massive financial investment, as assembling the right team to turn Lasar Group drone devastation into a smoothly running machine. That is how McDonald's operates. The manager oversees daily activities, while the recruited team runs the business like clockwork. Yelizarov's idea of the right team was one almost entirely composed of civilians, once again defying conventional military tradition. An astonishing 98% of members recruited into the group were former civilians before joining Lasar Group. Another shrewd move by Yelizarov was establishing an intelligence team within Lasar Group, which determines how to allocate drones and munitions to drone pilots. This team is not staffed by members of Ukraine's intelligence community, but by financial analysts who apply their knowledge of money flows to ensure drones reach where they are needed most. As of October 2025, Lasar Group had 30 pilots. Yelizarov planned to triple that number. Though unconventional, Lasar Group has achieved extraordinary results by not isolating the group from the Ukrainian military. While the former civilians operate in the bunker, Yelizarov's unit has been integrated into the National Guard of Ukraine, becoming one of the military's first official drone units. Yelizarov could be forgiven for resting on his laurels given the immense significance of his achievements for Ukraine. But that is not the style of the former television producer. Though he may joke about disliking hard work, he is one of the key minds behind Ukraine's emerging drone army concept, supporting it in multiple ways, including integrating Lasar Group into an initiative where drone pilots earn rewards for eliminating Russian soldiers. The Telegraph reported on this concept on January 25th, revealing that pilots receive 12 points for eliminating a Russian occupier, 100 points for destroying a helicopter, and 120 points for capturing hostages with their drones. These points can be redeemed for new drone equipment through Ukraine's Brave One marketplace, creating a gamified cycle, another example of how Ukraine leverages innovation rather than firepower to defend against Russia.
One Lasar Group member, using the call sign Phoenix, told the Telegraph, "This is about competition between units. Everyone wants to be at the top." Though it may seem odd, Phoenix's unit ranked 4th on the initiative's leaderboard in 2025, and he is clearly determined to climb higher by racking up more drone kills in 2026. Today, Lasar Group has refined its operations into a science. Starlink provides connectivity to control centers across Ukraine, enabling the unit's drones to cover vast distances while flying at the low altitudes necessary to evade Russian air defense systems. Ground teams coordinate with a drone pilot and a navigator at the control center, with the former supplying intelligence to the latter, who execute hundreds of missions each night. This level of efficiency would make even McDonald's envious.
And the results are undeniable. Yelizarov himself provided specific figures when speaking to the Wall Street Journal. The group's detailed logs are updated daily, allowing precise recording of everything Lasar Group drone pilots accomplish. As of January 16th, Yelizarov stated that 2,096 Russian tanks had fallen victim to Lasar Group drones. An astonishing 3,150 Russian armored fighting vehicles now lie as charred wrecks on the battlefield due to this drone unit's efforts. And Lasar Group continues. 765 Russian self-propelled artillery units have been destroyed by Lasar Group drones. Around 5,500 cargo trucks have discovered that the airborne threat lurking in the night targets them just as readily as Russian armored assets.
Adding all this to the rest of the equipment Lasar Group has destroyed via drones yields a colossal total, 24,000 units of equipment. Beyond depriving Russia of assets intended for assaults on Ukrainian lines or logistics in occupied areas, Lasar Group's efforts have indirectly cost Putin's invasion coffers billions of dollars. According to an Army Inform on January 18th, Lasar Group has destroyed Russian equipment valued at over $15 billion since Putin launched the invasion in February 2022. This figure does not come from Yelizarov himself, but from National Guard of Ukraine spokesperson Ruslan Muzachuk, who disclosed the extent of Lasar Group's effectiveness. "We are developing unmanned systems units, and Lasar Group is one of the most effective in Ukraine. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, they have destroyed equipment worth over $15 billion, Muzachuk reported. And this figure will only rise in the future as Lasar Group continues its impressive battlefield exploits. Comment number 2 if you support Ukraine, number 3 if you support Russia, and number 4 if you love peace.